no, I think I've just...
We're recording, so shut up, Sean. Right, so welcome to Dead Air. This is kind of soft reboot. I mean, Sean and I were meant to do one, I think, in the new year, kind of recap of the highlights of 2023, but then we realised that neither of us could remember much of that year. So anyway, we've got this very special guest and, a highly celebrated comedian, writer, broadcaster on GB News. Welcome, Nick Dixon.
Thanks, James. That was actually quite professional in the end, that intro, because your podcast is so unprofessional.
I know.
Suddenly, you kicked it. You found a new gear there, and you suddenly went comedian, writer, broadcast, and I was suddenly vaguely impressed. Sounded all right.
Well, you know what? No, I just like the thing about our podcast is, and this is why it gets so few views, it's because we're so exclusive here. We don't want viewers. We screen the viewers. We like.
You're treating it more like a Soho club, the kind of clubs that you go to.
Absolutely. Well, I need to pick a bone with you.
He's 2 minutes in and he's taking the piss out of you, James.
Yeah. Well, don't you worry. I can put it back. But the thing is, I just like this raw energy of the rift where nothing's scripted and stuff. But speaking of the Soho kind of debauched clubs, I mean, you went with me to Jerry's last time I met you, which was lovely. But this is the elephant in the room, Nick. Do you remember what happened after that? We went to the same. Well, no, nor should you, because we drank that much. But we went to the same tube station, and my All Saints fedora hat.
Oh,
it got blown onto the rail line.
Yes.
And now,
I was about to get it. I was about to get it. You risked my life.
No,
but someone. I was about to get it, but someone else stepped in. Someone more dispensable and some kind of immigrant.
Well, that was it. That was what I was about to say. I mean, you presumably like me.
That's fucking outrageous. Sorry, that's outrageous.
Presumably like me.
Dispensable.
Presumably like me, Nick, you want to lower immigration and you don't believe all this tosh that they're doing the jobs that lazy Brits won't. And yet when it comes down to it, Nick did not, in fact, risk his life to retrieve my hat. We had to leave it to some immigrant.
Yes, that's how you describe him. That's why that's in my head, Sean, because James described him as an immigrant on a public post, I believe, actually. And I just remember being young and very keen. And I was like thinking about it. I was looking at it going, okay, I was doing a risk assessment. But this young man, full of testosterone, perhaps with a less developed prefrontal cortex, just jumped right in and thought, I'll save this random man's hat and get on the tracks and risk death. For me, I would have done it, but I would have taken a little bit more time about it. It's like when my friend was in a street fight in Newcastle getting battered, and I did help. I jumped in. I weighed it up for a second, then I jumped in, took a few punches, hit a few people myself, and we got out.
And you thought, this is not for me.
Well, I just thought, my point is, I'm not a coward and I will do these things, but I might require like a second more reflection than a young man who, isn't strictly rational. He hasn't developed the capacity for rational thought. That's roughly my take on it. Is that right, James?
Well, I would have done it myself. It's just that I thought, I would happily risk my life. It's just that I've got to think about others, namely the nation and how in mourning they would be if I was actually to be killed, I mean, you
go around pretending that you shouldn't do, like, oh, obviously I'm not going to do it. That was the attitude I was getting from you, this kind of bizarre, a sort of effete, spoiled attitude that you're just like someone else should.
Well, I was basically a damsel in distress.
You do wear a lot of hats, and they do have a tendency to blow off occasionally, don't they?
Yeah. I don't even have the words for this. I'm supposed to be a writer. So carry on.
I've forgotten that. I've stopped drinking since, if that helps. Because I drank so much at the Christmas party for GB News, and then the next day I felt incredibly ill. Then I got this like lump in the side of my face, which was weird, but it turned out to be a lymph node. But I didn't realize I was ill with a virus because I thought I was just so hungover. It's just I had a virus. But I did 2 days quite ill at work, thinking, well, you can't take a day off because of a hangover. But it was actually technically there was a line where the hangover met the virus. There was an ambiguity there. But yeah, I got so ill after that, I was like, that put me off drinking. And Toby's been doing Dry January on my other podcast, The Weekly Skeptic. My other podcast, not that this is my podcast, but he managed to fall off the wagon. I asked him, Toby, how are you doing with Dry January? He goes, well, I've fallen off the wagon twice. It was January 16th. I was like, Toby.
You just said, Nick, he managed to fall off the wagon.
Yeah. But then I asked him again a week later.
But he managed to.
He managed to. Well, I just mean He told me he was going all the way to Lent. Not dry January wasn't enough for Toby. I'm going all the way to Lent. Then I spoke to him the week after January 16th, whatever that week would be, the 23rd, I guess. And he goes, "Oh, I've now fallen off the wagon 5 times." I'm like, this is not dry January. This is a very moist January, bordering on a wet January.
Very moist January.
Whereas I just easily did it because I don't need to drink. I just easily did it. I mean, I have a problem with eating chocolate and stuff, but drinking, there's not. I can take it or leave it. Much like James's hat on those tracks.
Well, Nick, I wanted to have a discussion with you, but this might not be the time or place, but about the nature of humour.
No, it's not the time. No, we're just easing Nick in.
No, James, shut up. I'm talking to Nick.
Interesting
Nick,
hosting style on this podcast. Go on.
Well, this is what we do. Because my view, can we slip into slightly serious mode and then possibly slip out of it?
Okay, yeah. I was being quite funny there, though. I'm never funny anymore. I'm very serious. Some people think I can't be funny anymore, but they don't realize I can flick a switch and it's just there still.
Well,
that's not okay, for myself. But I'll flick the switch off and I'll go to serious now.
My view is, and my training is in the philosophy of mind and stuff like that. But I think humour is the best way of conscripting the world into states of affairs that distort it and therefore make it amenable to living with. So I think humour is the best possible way of looking at the world, but not all of us get it.
Interesting.
So I probably hadn't expressed that very well, but
I wouldn't say that this has gone over my head rather than under it, Sean. So can you just
no one was talking to you.
Well, the existence of X, formerly Twitter, proves that an alarming number of people literally don't have a sense of humor. They literally cannot detect humor.
Yeah, that's my point. My point is that the best way to look at the world is through the prism of humor, and that's why many people are unhappy, because they don't get what that means. And that there's an asymmetry between the way you want the world to be and the way it is. And I'm asking this question, Nick, because I know you're a bright guy. So I just wondered what your thought was.
Do you know what? The first thing that came to me was a Michel Houellebecq novel where the protagonist is a comedian, but he's a French comedian, so it's a bit weird. I mean, could there really be such a thing?
French comedian?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a very fictitious version of comedian.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It couldn't exist, and it doesn't. But it doesn't resemble our comedians or anything. It's just a conceit for the book that the guy's a comedian, and it lets Houellebecq sort of go on these rants. Can't remember which one it is, but I've read nearly all of his books. And that one, there's just a line stands out where he said the problem with being a comedian is that ultimately the life isn't comic. It's tragic. That's what he concludes in the book. But you're sort of going with a different take. You're sort of saying what absurdism or humor is a way of coping with the existential realities of life. Is that your?
Yeah, I think I'm saying that there's nothing. I'm going to put it in a slightly different way. There's nothing about humor that doesn't make it serious. It's just different ways of looking at the world. And as
the best way to critique the world is through humor. Perhaps that.
Yes, that's my view.
Yeah. Do you know what? This is interesting actually, because I'm thinking about this a little bit. That quite often my posts are funny, or they're ironic, or they're hyperbole, or I kind of think of myself. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I'm more like an artist, right? Whereby, or a writer or whatever. But when I put out that recent post that got like 10,000 likes and 600,000 views, but I just wrote that at 2 a.m. on a sort of instinct, or like an intuition.
Yes.
So that's how I do these things. And then people want you to be, because you're in this commentary world, and especially because you're on the conservative side, they want you to just be this kind of guy in an ill-fitting blue suit, which I have worn, by the way, and just making these bullet points about immigration or whatever. But they don't expect you to be artistic or funny or ironic. And so when Matthew Stadland put one of his gimpy replies on it, and then I destroyed him, I threw in a Leonard Cohen quote, partly just to make that point.
You did destroy him, actually. Yeah, that was quite good.
Thank you. Well, I threw in a Leonard Cohen. Do you know why? Just to say that we actually are not what you think. One thing that really annoys me in the sort of straw man of GB News and GBBs and all this is that they're incredibly intelligent people on this channel. Like Andrew Doyle is basically the smartest guy you'll ever meet. Simon Evans is the other one. I don't know which one it would be. These are immensely. You've had him on the show.
Yeah,
these are immensely intelligent people. And so I'm always so annoyed at the caricature of GB News as this shouting right-wing tabloid stuff, when actually we have these incredibly sophisticated people on there. And I think we have, we're not allowed to be all sorts of things. This is slightly going off your point, but we're not allowed to be all kinds of things on the
I
so-called
think
conservative
I
side.
think part of it, Nick, is because there's a certain, when people are that intelligent, there's a certain self-deprecation about it. They don't have to announce their intelligence. I mean,
That's true.
you can,
Although Simon does.
with Simon, we had him on
we know.
here
Okay, well,
2 or 3 weeks
Sean,
ago,
we can't
didn't
go
we,
into that now.
James?
Right. No, I want to pick up on.
And he
Sean,
was.
shut up.
He,
Sean, shut up. Right. So
okay, I'll shut up then. Right.
Right. Yes. Good. Right, Nick. So on that tweet that got all those likes, I think it's the right one I'm thinking of, where you were basically summing up all of this nation's problems, and that basically there was no hope. So, and then of course you got some awful toads, some quite pretentious people saying, "Oh, you're just being engaging in sensationalism and sort of tabloid stuff by saying that." Well, no, I don't agree with that. I agreed with you entirely. And so, do you think, Nick, that there is any hope for this country, and sorry to put it crudely, but would hope just be a kind of lube to ease the buggering of this country that we are enduring now?
Yeah, it's a good question. Hope is in our nature, isn't it? So we almost can't help it. So that's how I find I write these very dark, or some people would say black pill posts, but then I'm assuming that I have that I'm going to carry on fighting anyway. Some people thought that it meant I was giving up. And that annoyed me because I never said that. Yeah, I just wrote, we have no police, no legal system, no army, no navy, no border, no education, no culture, no identity, no religion, no country. There's nothing left to fight for. England is just a memory. Some of us are lucky enough to have seen it before it was destroyed. It obviously touched a nerve because it's got 619,000 views, 9.8 thousand likes, and my account's not that big. So what I was thinking of was, now I feel a bit bad about the police because they do a very hard job, and I've since spoken to policemen, and there are of course good ones, and they do lots of tough jobs. So there is a caveats, of course. But I was thinking, would the police come to your house, or would you be confident they'd come to your house if you were arrested or burgled or something? Arrested, sorry, but assaulted or burgled? Not really. Would you feel you would have a case in court and enough money to fight your legal case, unless you maybe got involved with the Free Speech Union? No. And I just was thinking of the Lawrence Fox case as well. Did he get a fair hearing? The Army and Navy are admitting they're depleted, and they're telling us they need us. The border clearly doesn't work. Our education's an absolute disaster. No culture. I don't know. That's more broad, but we don't believe in our own culture, basically, in our own identity. We used to be a Christian country, now we're not. So I just said we have no country. What I was thinking of was conscription, and the fact that they wanted to conscript us into this thing that I'm claiming.
And what would we have to fight for? More speech laws? Is that what we're fighting?
Conscript us into something that no longer exists.
Exactly. I think I called it a simulacrum.
In England is just a memory. I think that's the salient proposition.
Well, didn't Philip Larkin write a poem, kind of prophesying that? I think I forget what it's called now.
Well, he wrote several poems railing against his parents and about the nature of.
Well, all of his poems are pretty grim, let's be honest. But yes, I think he was right on this one. I can't remember what it was called now. But anyway.
Well, if you say England is just a memory, I think that's absolutely true.
Man hands on misery to man, it deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can and don't have any kids yourself. That's the one that always stayed with me, and I've stuck by it. But now we've got a birth rate problem, so I'm not sure if Larkin was right there. But yeah, it was. What I was saying was, there is this country they want us to fight for doesn't exist. And someone said to me, I'd be more likely to fight a civil war. And that's kind of,
I think that's where we're going, isn't it? I mean, sorry to sound, again, sensationalist, but, have upwards of hundreds of thousands Islamists. That's not just hardcore conservative Muslims, that's actual Islamists in this country. What do you do with that? How do you actually tackle that when there are so many, and when you have these constant, let's be honest, pro-Hamas protests every Saturday in central London? What on earth? I mean, they completely dwarf the police force. There's nothing the police can do about that.
I know, yeah, and we've just seen Mike Freer, the MP, step down due to death threats and an arson attack. Tim Stanley wrote a good article about conscription as well, and the point is as well, why would you sign up for this neoliberal globalist project? So we have this strange situation where, of course, patriotic conservative people have been told they're scum. I mean, there was literally that army guidance went out in 2017. The press got hold of it in 2019, where it went out to top-ranking army people, and it was a series of, it was a set of guidance saying these are indicators of extreme right-wing people or opinions, and one of them was describing themselves as a patriot. I'm like, if you can't have patriots in the army, we're in massive trouble. And there were other ones like describing places as Istan, and there were things. My favorite one might have been making inaccurate generalizations about the left or government. So you could say the government is competent, or the left are benign and benevolent, and you would be an extreme right winger because you've made an inaccurate generalization. But that's so crazy. So then they're not going to sign up, and then on the other side, you've got the lefties who openly despise their country, believe in decolonization, hate imperialism, and so on. They're not going to sign up. So I was thinking, I wrote an article on Substack. I'm like, who's going to be left? It's just the Remainers sort of drinking lattes, and they're not going to be any good at fighting. And then who's going to be left to make all the rules?
Yeah.
Sourdough, yeah, exactly. Because and they're the ones having to run everything and tell us what to do. So they'll be. I mean, wars were won. Correct me if I'm wrong. In this country, but by working class people with patriotism and a moral compass who had fairly little opportunity, combining with posh men with an old-fashioned sense of duty and thin pencil mustaches. That's how we won these wars. We didn't win it with the Remainer professional blob class, did we?
So what you're telling me is that Otto English might not inspire young men to fight for our country then?
Well, that's it. I mean, it's him and Stadlin are always the people telling you off. I mean, Stadlin had a go at me. And the only examples he could cite of sort of British excellence were sport. It was fascinating. He just kept going on about cricket and rugby. I'm like, that is all you've got left, Matthew, to say that this is to say that we still have the country. He said, tell that to the England rugby players taking the field in Rome, or the England cricketers, or Ben Stokes. I'm like, do you have anyone who isn't in sport? It was hilarious.
But I'm a serious journalist, Nick, and I do my research. And from doing so this past week, I think, or this past 2 weeks, I found out that actually the top two issues facing this country are: one, MPs don't speak nicely enough to one another, and two, there are these misogynistic microaggressions. So
an insult culture. Andrew Tate.
an insult culture, yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I could believe it. Someone commits an asylum seeker who was already a sex offender with a criminal record. Tries to get asylum twice.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And on the third time, pretends to convert to Christianity, gets in, commits a corrosive chemical attack with a corrosive substance, technically not acid, but same type of thing. And I thought someone's going to blame this on Andrew Tate. And I had BBC on my bingo card, but it was actually on GB News. Some young man came on, and I don't know his name.
Oh, I remember the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said that he blamed. And I was like, I knew someone was going to blame
barrister, wasn't he? It was a barrister.
Yeah, so absurd. This is about and the other one was, of course, Newsnight with Caroline Noakes and the other woman and Kirsty Walk all saying, yeah, it's about microaggressions and insult culture. What are you talking about? It's about a mad asylum seeker who shouldn't be here. He's from a completely alien culture, throwing alkaline substances on people. I mean, this is.
But for these people like Caroline Oakes and what's the other awful, ghastly woman? Forget her name.
There's so many.
Yeah, there's so many. There's too many to remember, and they don't deserve remembering anyway. But I think they kind of see it as a kind of game show, which might be called not "Would I Lie to You," but "Would I Evade the Question?" And they get the more points, the more articulate or creative their evasion is.
No, it's completely absurd and the incredibly, I was going to say disappointing, but are you even surprised? Thing was that Gillian Keegan of the Conservative Party, alleged Conservative Party, did the same. Yeah. She said it's not really about asylum, and she deflected away from the question. And it was even Sky News was suddenly the Conservatives going, well, it is kind of about asylum. He was an asylum seeker. I mean, how is it not about asylum? It's at very least partially about asylum, isn't it? It was so shocking. Why is that the memo? And they're just continuing to gaslight the public. It's an unfortunate situation, isn't it? Because when the politicians are that divorced from the public, which they have been for decades, but it's become so extreme, can't end well.
So do you think there's any hope? Is there anything the public?
Oh yeah.
And can we vote for anyone that would actually affect change on these matters or not?
Well, yeah. Despite the people who accuse me of doomerism and all this nonsense, I'm not like that. I mean, I am someone who will fight to the death, like Churchill, that phrase about choking in our own blood. You know, I'm someone who will not leave the country. I will fight for it anyway, but I'll fight for my version of it, which is, I suppose, what I do with my podcast and GB. And not that I'm doing much; it's just mouthing off, isn't it, on the telly? I'm not saying it's making a big difference, but I'll always say, you know, I always speak the truth on TV about these pretty contentious things where sometimes you even think, am I in danger talking about this?
Yes.
But you talk about them, you tell the truth. That's all you can do. Sometimes my dad says I wouldn't say that, and I'm like, well, this is why people listen to me. So I just get out there and tell the truth. That's what I do. It's not maybe doing enough. Other people do other things, and we build our own little media and all this that makes some sort of impact. And we're all doing our things, but in little silos. I mean, Ed Dutton talks about the Neo-Byzantium. Will it be is it? But my point was not that I'm not fighting, or not trying or giving up, but I don't believe necessarily in the construct that they're getting me to sign up for, which is the globalist project. They've told me I don't have a nation, I don't have a home, I'm a citizen of Europe, and now they want me to fight for. Maybe I'm too old, but they want people to fight for this country, but we've been told the flag is racist. So which is it? That was my point. Doesn't mean we're giving up, but it means we're fighting, I suppose, to try and build the culture back based on our traditions. But we're not prepared to sign up for the current thing, to quote the name of my own podcast. We're not, whatever that is.
Yes, yeah. No, exactly. And so Sean and Nick, Sean, are you still there?
You told me to shut up. So
No, still shut up, but speak once I've made my point.
Okay, I'll shut up.
Or posit the question. Right, so don't you think also that the world is so confusing now? I mean, we talk about the pro-Hamas protests. Honestly, Nick, if I'm there in central London on a Saturday, I sometimes mistake them for Pride ones. You know, these bearded, sweaty men shouting "Batty Boy" at me. And you can't distinguish them from Pride marches, in all honesty. And I don't know, it's all getting so confusing, especially, with the trans whole thing. I mean, goodness me, there's one woman, I won't name her obviously, but in a local Chiswick school here, and she's said that her 6 or 7-year-old boy is trans, and of course she's just doing it for the kind of social currency.
Yeah, that's very disturbing, isn't it? How many Hollywood actresses' children are trans? It's like, wow, that's an incredible coincidence. They're all trans. I mean, it must be. Is there something in the water in California? Well, there probably is. That's a separate
Well, do you know
issue.
what? I've got a kind of Alex, what's he called? Alex Jones conspiracy theory about this. I think that it's the lead in the John Paul Gaultier that's turning the freaking gays straight. I seriously do. Right, Sean, come back into this.
That's so funny. Just on that as well, on the gay trans thing, poor old Andrew Doyle's just been attacked, my friend Andrew, by various
I know.
women on
people who were meant to be on his side.
Yeah, and I didn't really follow it that much, but I saw that it was sort of trending weirdly, and I messaged Andrew, and he was fine. He sometimes takes a break from Twitter when everyone's being a total dick, but he said they hate gay men, and there's a new thing, isn't it? Where it's like, oh, the gays are out now, so it's not really clear what side the gays are on, is it? Because as a gay man, which you are, but I made it sound like I was then, but as a gay man, let me just say, gay men are sort of, it's not clear what side they're on. I mean, Mike Freer.
Well, they're on their own side. It's me is the refrain of my life.
Fair enough. I mean, look, it's tricky for me because obviously, I'm against women and gays. So I'm like, which side do I pick? It's like, do I want Man City or Liverpool to win the league? It's like neither. So it's tricky for me. But you're still men. Gay men are still men. We're still against women in the common fight. I sort of see it like that.
Do you know, Nick? Okay, very quickly, Nick. Let me interject. 2 of my female friends. I won't name them, but the other day, they found these new things called opinions. And they keep on expressing them to me. I mean,
That is unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. Right, Sean, get back in here.
Can I just say one quick thing on that? When Mike Freer, I do want to hear from Sean, when Mike Freer stepped down because of death threats and arson attacks, he still felt the need in his resignation letter, to praise diversity and how diverse the area was, which was so strange to me because it was diversity that was threatening his life. It was fiery but mostly peaceful diversity, you could say.
Mostly peaceful diversity.
Yeah, remember that. It's just so funny. So he's just like, no, I still absolutely believe all this, but I'm stepping down because of death threats. And it's like, which side is he on as a gay man? Clearly, there's diversity in diversity. yes, he's a gay man, so he's not a straight white male Christian or something, or he might be a Christian, but he's clearly under attack from people who hate that fact that he's gay. So it's which side are the gays on now? It's not very clear to me.
Well, I've always been told that I'm the straight man's gay man. I'm the most homophobic gay you could ever meet. But, I mean, I don't know if I might have to edit this out, what I say now, because it is so controversial. But I do think there are different species of gay, Nick, and some of them inhabit the worst qualities of women and none of the good ones of men. I might have to edit that out. Sean, please save me.
Worst qualities of women.
Okay, yeah, Sean, just please say something to save me from myself.
All right, so we're back.
I don't know when James says he's gone out for a fag, it can mean several synonymous meanings.
Good point.
Okay. I was going to ask you about the nature of humour, and I cannot ever do stand-up comic stuff because I could not handle the heckling.
Oh, interesting. So the first one is interesting because people always have this fear of heckling, which is not really that big a deal. It's not that big a part of the job. I was just listening to Graham Linehan's book, so I'm going to do a show with him hopefully soon. Podcast.
He's a genius.
He is a genius, but in his book he said he had tried stand-up, but then he found it was not a job for sensitive types with a lot of stored anger from being bullied at school. I thought, well, maybe that's why I didn't do better in it, because that's, I mean, surely that's exactly who it's for. But that's what I thought.
Oh, that's a brilliant point.
But I'm thinking, well, that's me. That's most stand-ups. So I don't think that's actually the reason he couldn't do it or didn't want to do it. I think that those both go with the job, that you've had a bad time in the past and you probably are. A lot of stand-ups are sensitive. I mean, it's just horrible. You just have to do it anyway. It is strange. You're up there. I've quite often, this doesn't really answer your question, but in doing stand-up for 11 years, I quite often looked at a room like a Jongleurs in Portsmouth or wherever, or a Preston Frog and Bucket or a Manchester Frog Bucket, whatever room it was. I'd be looking at the room thinking, I wouldn't want to be in this room for any reason. And not only do I have to be in the room, I have to get on the stage in front of these people and then make them laugh. It's just like, that's absolutely ridiculous and horrific. So I would always, it was, I mean, so it was actually, I don't want to say it was brave because people said it was brave to do stand-up, but I always thought it was a bit weird, but there was a certain...
I'd say it was brave.
Well, the only bravery for me was when you knew it was going to go badly, but you had to do it anyway. So,
right.
But is that bravery because then you've committed anyway? You can't just leave. So like you look at the room, you go, "This is going to be a shitstorm," and I just have to get up and do my best and just hammer them with whatever I've got. And you know,
but was there a situation in which you sort of stood up there and thought this is going to go wrong, but you brought them round?
Yeah, there's loads like that. I mean, that's the whole challenge a lot of the time on the club circuit when you're unknown. That's the challenge half the time. Someone like me, I'd come up there, they would already not trust me immediately for some reason. I'd have to always win them over, and people were not expecting me to, because I'm from the north and I obviously just from a normal background, so people perhaps expected me to be more of a smart ass or something. I don't know what it was. They just didn't trust me immediately, but then I could win people around. But then sometimes you can't. But yeah, so many times you have to do that and just dig yourself out of it. And there's various ways you can just comment on things in the room. You can just go more aggressive with your pace and you can just hit the joke, hit as many punchlines as you can. There's loads of things you can do. But yeah, it's quite funny. I was thinking about it last night because I was listening to Graham's book and I was just thinking how it's so weird that I don't really think about stand-up anymore. I never miss it. I don't think about it. Yet it's all I did for over a decade, several times a week.
Well, that must have been a really, really brave way of living your life, to be honest. I remember Larry David saying that he actually went out onto a comedy circuit or a comedy club looking at the audience and going, nah, this isn't going to work, and walking off again.
Yeah, that was a famous thing.
Which is internally funny anyway.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So he was just such a funny person. Wasn't suited for stand-up, but was just such a funny person. I mean, stand-up's not even about the funniest person. It's about a number of things. And it helps if you can have an immediately identifiable, almost cartoon-like persona. If you're not too complicated, and they can, that's the Scouse one, like John Bishop or something like that. Or, Peter Kay, just people that fit very neatly. And I'm not making excuses saying, because they were just very talented. And I was okay at stand-up. I was good. But then I watched someone like Sean Walsh.
You were good. Well, you are
good. Same name as you.
Yeah, you are good. Yeah, you are.
Thank you. But if you watch someone like my friend Sean Walsh has the same name as you, obviously missing one end.
That's me.
He is. He was so incredibly talented that you just see him on stage, and occasionally I could do just as well as him on, or slightly better if it was my night on a certain club. But he would just be just another level of performance ability. So I
Is
find
it,
this
is
stuff
it the
I'm doing
one?
now
Is it
suits
the
me.
one-liners, or is it the facial expressions, or is it the just general interaction with?
Well,
What is it? What is it that makes someone like that so much funnier than? Because you're funny.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was just a great
But
performer. I was just more of a writer who's standing up there saying things, and I was funny at school, and I was able to. So I do have a funny delivery, but
Okay,
someone
wait,
like that was.
I'm back now. So can I just
Oh,
ask that now, Nick?
no, we're having a conversation here, James. Piss
Yes.
off.
Come on, we all know it's my show, Sean. Really, honestly. I mean, I make
Oh,
radio.
for flip's sake, Nick, we were having a really good conversation
No,
here,
yeah.
I'm
James.
sorry.
We were
I'm sorry.
saying homophobic stuff. It was great.
Oh, wonderful. Well, this
We
is
were
why I
having
do the conversation.
it was
But
brilliant, and then you've suddenly barged into the
Sean,
conversation.
Sean, I'll mute you if I can. Right. Look, I
What
make
you want to fisticuffs, do you?
look, I make radio and podcasts seem easy, whereas Sean makes it seem impossible. I'm sorry to
We were
say.
having a good conversation about the nature of comedy, and you've
No,
barged
yes,
in.
which I've no, one of which I've picked up on, which is when Nick said that he was a funny guy at school, which I was as well. Now, was that because, as Jeff Norcock says, that because
Norcock. I think his name's
Norcock,
Norcock.
I don't know,
That's his gay
Norcock.
alter ego. James has gayed everything up.
whatever his name is, we know to whom I
That's his
speak.
porn name.
Okay, that's his porn. Okay, it's like
In a
whenever I
crashing conversation, at least get the names
Probably his
right.
porn name would probably be Jeff Moorcock, actually. But anyway, go on.
Norcock, yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I'm
okay.
so sorry. I
I
apologize to everyone.
My point was going to be that on all my sort of school report cards, they'd always say, "Oh, James might do more well in his studies if he didn't spend so much time being the class clown." But that's how I survived. That's how I ingratiated myself with the bullies. Was that the same with you, Nick, or not?
Yeah, I mean, was it that? That was one thing. It's just everyone.
Nick, you don't see what he's doing here, do you?
Oh,
He's infiltrating the conversation as the bully. So
I see.
let's let him get on with it.
He's
No,
the
that
bully.
quite innocently asked the question.
This is still about comedy. I mean, I just always assumed at school that being funny was the whole point of everything. When I was 10, I told a joke spontaneously. It made the whole class and the teacher laugh. And it was a pretty sophisticated level of humor. It was like a clever pun on the spur of the moment. And I was like, and that probably was a defining moment for me because I ended up doing stand-up comedy. But that was what I thought life was all about, just waiting for a gap, bang, come in with your joke. Or sometimes you get on whole rants as well, like in the pub or something, and you'd be just on fire. To me, that's all I cared about for years and years. Now I'm not. Now I'm trying to be very serious, as we discussed. I'm a serious commentator, but for years that was just my whole thing. And people, when I was leaving school, said, "Oh, you'll be all right, Dixon, because you're funny," or someone would buy me a drink because I was funny. This was my whole life. It was just being funny. Now it's perversely about trying to tone that down as much as possible and be incredibly serious, just because I've done that for so long, I'm like deliberately want to be not funny. So I don't even get offended if people say I'm not funny now, because I'm like, thank you. I'm very serious. But yeah, that was school. Was that how it was for you? Just waiting for the teacher, and then you chip in with something, or?
Yes, no, exactly, yeah. And
It was more like wit than clowning. People would say the class clown. I was more like
I
wit.
mean, there's only the thinnest line between cattiness, snark, and wit, actual wit, And I like to think that I have wit, not just lazy snark, which most people mistake for wit.
And were you also in the north?
Yes, I was in Derby. Well, yeah. So I went to a minor public school, which was actually South Yorkshire. And so yes, I was in the north. Of course,
you were public school. I was in the comprehensive, so a bit rougher. I don't know what public school humor's like. It's probably the same, but a bit more.
It was kind of. I mean, my year was it was quite posh and gay. In fact, I actually, I think that's the whole reason that I was gay, because I went to minor public school.
That's the whole reason you were gay, because you went to.
No, I blame that. I blame my affliction of homosexuality on my school. But
that's what I've heard. But I thought if you're not allowed to say that because it's sort of like that's sort of controversial, but you can say it yourself, and so that's to be just true.
But
James, we're having a perfectly reasonable conversation about the nature of sexuality, and you've basically butted yourself in. Not for the first time, I imagine.
That's not fun, isn't it? No, this is the nature of sexuality. But no, I don't want to talk about the gay stuff. We don't want to do that. This is a serious podcast and a family show. But if I were
what fucking family are you thinking of? The Addams family? His
the
family
Manson
would listen to
family.
this.
No, but look, if I were to do kind of vicious, waspish jokes at school, then I'd always
Here we go.
choose the right kind of people to joke about. You know, obviously the downtrodden. You know,
Mm.
and so it always went
Here
well.
we go. It's going to end up with me in slagging me off.
Well, I think that do you know how you can look at these Google analytics to see what demographic most of your viewers come from? I've been doing that, Sean, actually, on our podcast, even though we don't get that many. But we get it's so bizarre, actually, because we get 200 or 150 to 200 views each episode, even though we don't promote the things.
We have Nick Dixon on here, who's comedy legend superstar.
So we'll get even more views.
It's announced that he has to go in 5 minutes, and you're talking about something else.
Well, on Weekly Skeptic, we have
absolutely unbelievable.
Weekly Skeptic. We have
promote
1 something million
yes.
downloads. So if this doesn't do anything, it is purely your guys' fault.
Well, no. What I'm saying is
not my fault. No,
Sean, shut up. Sean, I'm trying to make a point, which is that I've found out that most of our viewers actually come from the Met Police.
Is that true?
Now why would that be, Sean? Probably because
that's quite worrying. They're just trolling for. I don't really believe you, but obviously they're just looking for information. Because James said to me in a short break we had that he was going to take out all his controversial bits and leave mine in. So this is how I get arrested.
Well, I've always thought the idea of being arrested quite romantic, actually. You know, 2 strapping officers, and you know, they might say to me that handcuffs aren't necessary, whereas I would say, oh, they absolutely are. But that my only fear of prison is that I might not survive there. I don't know. You know, I can imagine that if I were in the showers and I said, oh, I seem to have dropped the soap. And then if I repeat it and say, oh, I say,
okay, I'm going to call
I seem to have dropped the soap. Then I can imagine that they might just ignore me. You know, that's
if being arrested, though, you can't get into America. And what if you need to flee and go to America and then you've got a criminal record? That's the only problem with being arrested, by the way.
I'm going to call a halt on this. We've had Nick Dixon, Comedy Gold, on the show, who's probably thinking, what the fucking hell have I let myself in for?
No, I knew what I was letting myself in for. I was coerced.
Actually, well, you weren't coerced, but not by me.
Me too.
There is, you know, whenever Nick says nice things about me, not Sean, obviously, there is never a gun to his head. There is never a gun to his head. Absolutely, it's all sincere.
Do you know what? Maybe I'll just say this because it's on this topic of gayness. I found myself defending. First, I defended Holly Valance, who's a woman, because she said something conservative, but she's an actor. And I was like, why are all the women calling her a gold digger and stuff? These are her own opinions, because her husband's a big Tory donor. So I was standing up for women, James. And then I was defending Andrew Doyle, because of course he's gay. Then I was defending Lindsay Smith, who's this poor Newcastle United fan who's been spied on by the Premier League. And then Dennis was thanking me for defending a lesbian. I wasn't thinking of it like that. I was just thinking, no, I just stand up for truth. But suddenly I've accidentally become a kind of advocate for the oppressed. A kind of, am I a lefty now? I don't know.
Well, do you know what? Well, speaking of that, I don't know, I might have 2 minutes left or something, but I've always thought of myself as a kind of working class hero, you know.
Right.
You know, there was, I mean, just the other day, there was some homeless chap on Chiswick High Road, and
there we go.
And you know, of course, you know, I was sympathetic to his plight, and so money was exchanged, and I owe him about a tenner now. But yeah,
that is funny. I mean, you are a working class hero, James. You went to public school. You wear a Federer. You've got all the hallmarks.
He's only got a Federer because some prick didn't rescue it from the railway.
Yeah, that's true.
No,
you hate
exactly.
the poor. You just all the hallmarks of a working class hero.
The fruity accent as well.
Yeah. Apart from not being working class or a hero, you know, you've got the rest of it nailed.
Absolutely. Well, shall we finish on that?
We could do.
I'd like to say to Nick, this has been brilliant, and I'm sorry if it ended on a sour note.
It was fine. Thanks, Sean. It was a lot of fun. I'm worried it was too much fun and we'll all get cancelled. But I mean, you guys don't have much to lose. I have a lot more to lose than you guys.
Oh, come on.
How do you
Nick,
know?
No. Here I must object. Nick, come on. We all know that I'm the kind of kingmaker in the media world.
That is true. I've read your piece. No, James, you're a very good writer. Sean, you're a good writer as well. I haven't read as much of yours, but I've read James because he sends them to me.
Oh, have you
But
read my bit on? I
huh?
can't remember, but I do. Have you actually read anything I've written?
Yeah. You've written for the Daily Skeptic and stuff, haven't you? What have
Yeah,
you
I
written? What have you written
done.
lately that we should check out?
Written something on conservative woman, and
So Sean says, have you read what I've written? Then he says, and then he follows it up by saying, I can't remember what I've written.
well, I don't remember what I've written. Once I've written it, I send it off. But
Do you know what? We're all writers here. We're really the literary vanguard here.
But the other thing is that the editors, so many of the editors, are just so craven. You can't.
Oh,
I mean,
my last piece wasn't for the Daily Skeptic. It was for TC. It was for the Conservative Woman about the nature of Roger Scruton's theory about games.
Wow.
well, but you know, I mean, do you know, Nick? One more thing before we go.
Yeah.
I've said this, I think, on a few podcasts before, or whatever I was on radio or something, perhaps the TV, I don't know. But I was rejected by this publication called Filth Magazine because apparently my writing's even too obscene for them. I mean, you know, you've made it when you get rejected by Filth Magazine.
Too filthy for filth. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to beat that.
Right. No.
Shall I do my promotions in case, because I want
Oh,
the
please
mess
do.
loose
Yes. Yeah.
to go to all my stuff.
This will go. This has been brilliant, actually.
It
Have you
has. Thank
enjoyed
you so
it?
much.
I have enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. You know, you can work on the tech side, but other than that, yeah. So go to the Weekly Skeptic podcast if you want to hear me and Toby doing.
I always listen to
weekly
that.
banter.
I think it's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. And then my other podcast is the
I
current
like
thing.
Peak Woke.
Sean
Oh,
loves
yeah.
his
my
speech,
my
doesn't
my
he?
my.
Oh, thank you so
Sorry,
much.
go on.
Yeah, and you can pay for more content as well on our site. It's basedmedia.org. So if you really like it, and so Weekly Skeptic, basedmedia.org. My own podcast is called The Current Thing, and I interview guests, and we do some episodes that are topical banter with comedians. We've interviewed some big people: Andrew Doyle, Lord Frost, Richard Tice, Carl Benjamin, all kinds of people. So check that out. The Current Thing. My writing is nickdixon.substack.com. Thank you very much.
Super, Nick. Thank you so
Brilliant.
much for joining us.
Thank you so much
Thanks.
for joining us. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.